Well, hello, my toxic minions. How are you this fine afternoon? As I prepare to get in ready to go to work, I wanted to sit and talk about another Consider the Source material, the 1990 book by John Steakley called Vampires. Not to be confused by Vampire $, which for some reason has picked up traction and a lot of people refer to it as. It was turned into a 1998 film by John Carpenter's, retitled John Carpenter's Vampires. And today, the distinction between the two, which one's better, which one's worse, what was more loyal to the source material, what was not, will be our topic of discussion as we consider the source. Stay tuned.
Consider the source, it's all the same. Truth or twisting, adaptations gain. He holds scales, he holds the light. The Lord of toxicity will rule the night.
In 1990, a vampire book, unlike many of the others in the genre, was released. It's titled Vampires with a $, instead of the S at the end of Vampires. It was written by novelist John Steakley, who has only 2 credits to his name. He's a Texas native and wrote this as a kind of genre bender of westerns meets horror, as a team of vampire hunters, calling themselves Vampire Inc., kill vampires in small towns across the Southwest, ostensibly for the Catholic Church, but they also charge all of the towns that they go into quite an exorbitant amount of money. The best way to do this is to kind of do it backwards and talk about the movie before I talk about the book. That's the general premise of the source material, and it is basic bones of what the film is about. But let's get into the film for a second. This is a little bit different than how I usually do it, just because it kind of needs to be. But in 1998, the book was optioned by John Carpenter, who at that point was having a hard time in the 90s. He wanted to do just a straight-up horror film. The film stars James Woods as the titular character of Jack Crow, the main vampire hunter, both in the book and in the adaptation for the movie. That's about it for the bare bones premise of it. Let's take a look at a clip real quick. This is the team of vampire hunters Jack Crow employs. They go into a nest and they find a series of goons. Goons are basically zombified type vampires that don't have a lot of reasoning or agency of their own. There are usually a dozen or so less of them, and then they'll have a master vampire, one that can pose as a human being and has all the superhuman attributes of a vampire, and some of their weaknesses, of course. In the movie version, James Woods, playing Jack Crow, leads his team going after the vampires and finds out that the vampires have an ulterior motive. That they are looking for this ancient cross that's going to allow vampires to walk in the daylight. The main antagonist is Valak, the first vampire created by the Catholic Church. Valak is a master vampire and the most powerful. And we find out in a flashback that he's wiped out the European Slayer team, and now he's going after the American team. In the opening onset in Act 1, after the Team Crow goes in and wipes out a nest, not finding the master because he was hidden someplace else, They go away to a motel to party, get hookers, get drunk, and get high, as one does after a hearty day of vampire hunting. And he goes in there and just basically wipes all of them but 2 out. Jack and his tech guy, Montoya, played by Daniel Baldwin, managed to escape with one of the prostitutes who's been bitten by Valak. It's basically an on-the-road movie from then on for the rest of the film, with Jack, Montoya, the girl, played by Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks, and a new recruit named Adam, or Father Adam, from the Catholic Church, trying to figure out what it is that Valak is looking for and how to stop him from getting it. Once they discover the MacGuffin, the black cross that's going to allow vampires to walk in the daylight, the main road trip mission turns into, can we find the cross before he does and stop him from getting it? What follows is pretty straightforward, and I'm not going to lie, it's one of my favorite movies. It's also definitely, next to From Dusk Till Dawn, one of my favorite vampire movies. It's John Carpenter through and through, and James Woods is a great choice to have as your main protagonist, because he's not somebody that you would ordinarily think of as, the hero type. He usually plays kind of the psychotic heavy in most films that he's in. This movie definitely is rewatchable. I've seen it at least 24 times. We've talked about it on Loser's Lounge. It's funny. It's misogynistic. It's toxic. It's just 90 minutes of pure adrenaline and gore. It's everything that a vampire horror movie should be. These kind of vampires, as Jack Crow says, they're not laying in coffins lined with taffeta. They're not speaking cheesy Eurotrash stuff and prancing around. They're not your sparkly vampires. They're straight up monsters. And Valak is a terrifying villain. Near the end, they wind up going to a town. They get into a basic standoff between a bunch of master vampires, including Valak, and terminating as many as they can before their own numbers get turned against them. As Montoya gets bitten, the girl turns against them, and Jack is captured, leaving Father Adam to his own devices. We find out that the reason why the vampires were onto the team in the first place is because their cardinal, their main tie to the Catholic Church, has betrayed them. Through the course of a very rushed third act, Montoya does come through, as does Father Adam. They save the day, rescue Jack, get the Black Cross, and destroy Valak. Montoya, being bitten, gets a 2-day head start from Jack to take off with the girl. And Father Adam and Jack are going to wipe out the rest of the vampires in the small town. That's basically the first half of the book. From then on, like I said, I have to speak about this in reverse, just due to the fact that the book has so much more material than the movie does. The movie's just the basic, bare bones of it. Now, the 1990 novel has just about everything that I just mentioned, minus Valak and the Black Cross MacGuffin. I can see why they put it in there, because the book is a little bit more meandering, but not in a bad way. The opening scene is just the same. Jack and his crew take out a nest, and then they're set upon by a master vampire. But instead of Valak, we're going to find out later, the guy's name is Russell. And he's a bit of a fop that is decided that he's going to take over a certain area of the Southwest, and a higher vampire named Simon Kennedy. These vampire names are terrible in the book, I'm not going to lie. He tells him that if he wants to be able to keep his vampire coven, nest, whatever, in that area, he's got to take out Team Crow. And he almost does so. He manages to take out everybody except for Jack and his number one man, Cherry Cat Catlin, who is basically the Montoya character in the book. They do wind up falling back to Monterey, which is kind of hinted upon in the movie. That's their base of headquarters, and when they go back, he regroups, gets a couple more members. They wind up getting a local deputy in one of the towns, jumps in with them, and they do get Father Adam. He's played pretty much the same in the novel that he is in the movie. Of course, in the novel, he doesn't become the team's punching bag. He's basically just kind of a sideline character. He doesn't come really through till the third act. They have a guy named Carl Joplin, which is their, for lack of a better term, he's their Whistler character that does all their tech and their weapons. And through the course of the massacre where all of his team got wiped out, Jack comes up with the idea of utilizing silver with guns. Why this was never come up with before, unknown. It's a big plot hole in the book, I'm not going to lie to you. But the fact that it has to be shot from a single shot pistol, one at a time, again, not explained, brings Jack to remember time when he was in law enforcement and he ran across a cartel contractor named Felix. Felix is what we refer to as a gunman. He's one of those people that you'll see on YouTube or some other clip show like Top Gun or Top Shot, rather, that is able to draw and fire so fast that a camera can't even catch him. The problem is Felix is kind of a pussy and doesn't want to get involved in any of this stuff. It's not that he doesn't believe it. It's just that he's a coward. He's got many millions of dollars saved up from his time working for the cartel, and all he wants to do is get drunk and run his bar. Unfortunately for him, the vampires do wind up finding him, thanks in no small part to Jack trying to recruit him, and so he has to line up with Team Crow. What they wind up doing in the next couple of set pieces is going into a small town where they know that it's a trap that the vampires have set for him, and they go in anyway. Jack decides that, well, if we're going to go out in a blaze of glory. And he figures since he has Felix, and Felix has a Browning 9mm and a backup one of silver bullets blessed by the Holy Catholic Church, it doesn't kill vampires, but it does slow them down. And even the master vampires, which can move faster than you can see in a blur, like you see in like Interview with a Vampire and a couple other films, Felix is so fast he can actually catch them. And the silver has a kind of analgesic quality to it, kind of, where it activates something in them that slows them down, and it slows them down long enough for them to hit them with a crossbow and pull them out into the sunlight. And that's basically what they do in the third act. Where it really differs is the fact that Jack winds up getting killed and Felix winds up taking over Team Crow, and it becomes Team Felix for Vampire Inc. He decides to do things a lot differently than Jack has done up to that point. He doesn't play cowboy missions and think in a samurai term. The way that he decides to do things is to play it smart. When this movie came out, John Carpenter's Vampires, based on the book, it was late summer 98, early fall, I think. Right before Halloween time, I believe. But I might be misremembering that. But anyway, it was 1998, and I did work at a movie theater, and I remember somebody asking me what I thought about the movie, and one of the first things I said was, well, if the vampires are in these nests inside these buildings, why don't they just blow up the building, and then anyone that comes out, they just pull into the sunlight, instead of going inside the building and making themselves targets, since the vampires are so powerful. And one of the kids that worked there said, hey, it's funny you should say that, because that's exactly what they do in the book. So he gave me the book, and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. The writing tends to be very teenager, and it's got a lot of silly stuff. There's a character named Dale Boyjock in it, and it's just really cringy. Rock and roll is used so many times that if you were to decide to take a drink each time one of the characters in the novel says rock and roll, you'd be at alcohol poisoning within an hour. But it has an earnestness quality to it. It has a great, us small band of brothers against this superior enemy thing. These regular mortal guys taking on these supernatural creatures. That just appeals to me. And, I'm a Catholic. I grew up in the Catholic Church. I always thought that was kind of a cool, interesting thing, that they'd have a secret society of vampire hunters working for the Catholic Church. So I've read the book several times. I'm disappointed and I'm saddened by the fact that John Steakley passed away before he could work on the sequel to it. He's also got a book called Armor, which is similar in concept, but a little bit more of a Starship Troopers ripoff. It's definitely worth a read if you're into that kind of sci-fi warrior fantasy type thing. But for my money, Vampires is definitely the better. Now, the question is, which one is better, the movie or the source material? And at the end of the day, that's what this is always about, isn't it? So, you've got the novel. It's got a lot of information in it that the movie doesn't have. It's got a main character in it that the movie doesn't have. And what you have with these master vampires gets fleshed out a little bit more in the novel than it does in the book. In the movie. The masters look cool as shit in the movie, that's for sure. The scene where all the masters get up and get out of the dirt and go attack a local monastery is really amazing and kind of scary, actually. The low-level goons, they're not represented as well in the novel as they are in the film. In the film, they look like the kind of thing that you expect, that they're actually monsters. They're deadly creatures. They're not just walking around. As far as Team Crow, do I like them better in the book than in the film? Oh, man, that's a tough one. Without the addition of Felix, the gunman, it really takes a lot away from the story. But it's so hard to be harsh on the John Carpenter style, having James Woods as the protagonist, Daniel Baldwin. They're just great. And I get a tickle out of listening to the dialogue. I know a lot of it was improvised by Woods, and that makes it even funnier. So I guess at the end of the day, I got to make a hard choice. And the winner is the novel by a hair. This is the first one that I've done where I've actually considered the source material to be better than the adaptation. It doesn't take anything away from the adaptation. The movie is great. I love it. It's definitely something that I can rewatch, but the book is also great. If you get an opportunity to read the book, I highly suggest you do so. One of the few times I would say the audiobook, not so great. Maybe leave the audiobook alone, because the guy that reads it, God bless him, he does this gravelly voice thing with the characters that just isn't great, and it doesn't sound as good out loud as it does in your head when you read it. So if you can pick up a copy, I definitely would encourage you to do so. And if you have a chance, and I'll add it in the bio here and in the link, take a look at our Losers Lounge where we redid John Carpenter's Vampires. I think we did a good job, and I think it was really entertaining and funny. But yeah, so that's John Carpenter's Vampires, or John Steakley's Vampires, depending on which version, and I'm going with the book on this one, guys. For the next one, please leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about. I've had a lot of people say I should do something to the effect of No Country for Old Men. It's definitely a consideration. I did a college paper on No Country for Old Men. If you're liking what you're hearing, I'm learning every day more stuff about YouTube and getting more interested in the technology to do these kind of things. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It definitely helps me out a lot. Any suggestions or arguments, I'd love to hear it. If you've read the book and you liked it, but you like the movie better, I'd like to hear that too. If you've never read the book, again, I cannot recommend it enough. I think you can pick up a copy anywhere. I think on Amazon or Thrift Books, I think it's only like $4 or $5. That's what I bought my copy for from Thrift Books. So, again, give it a look if you are so inclined. And thanks again, guys, for joining me for another episode of Consider the Source.
Riding on the waves of destruction, a toxic presence, a lord of corruption, polluting the ocean, spreading in decay, the top turning black, going the flame, searing through the sand.
I've got balls of steel.
You ever seen a vampire? They're not romantic. Forget whatever you've seen in the movies. They don't turn into bats. Crosses don't work. You want to kill one? You drive a wooden stake right through his heart. We think we got a nest inside this place. Let's get to work. Figure on at least 6 goons, maybe more. Chances are we'll find a master in here somewhere. We got a fish! Go! Go! Jack's right behind us! When we were set up, he knew my name. It's time to kill some vampires.
Wherever you go, I will hunt you down.
You can't